the biggest question is, why did Hezbollah stop? There's no reason for Hezbollah to stop. They believe the leader of Iran, Khamenei, not the president, must be infallible because they're speaking on behalf of God. From a Shia perspective, it's a bid'ah. Khomeini had to make up a new theory. He must be obeyed. Otherwise, you will be disobeying God. The majority of Turks are secular Islam haters. The Ottomans themselves, due to our political ignorance, these tyrannical regimes made us ignorant. If we're going to answer who is actually the winner due to this ceasefire, it's neither Hezbollah nor the Israelis. Hezbollah will always lose because the real winner is the Americans.
Assalamu alaikum. Today on the I3 Pulse, is the Gaza ceasefire a victory for the resistance or a betrayal of the Palestinian cause? Just 25 days after Netanyahu promised to disarm Hezbollah, Israel has agreed to a truce. Stay tuned as we uncover who's really behind pulling the strings of this deal and reveal the hidden ways that Iran wields control over its proxies. Today on I3 Pulse. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How's it going?
Good.
Alhamdulillah. Many people on Twitter are saying that this ceasefire is a big win for Hezbollah. Is this true? Who's winning? Is Hezbollah winning or Israel winning? Who won?
Well, look, the ceasefire came about all of a sudden. Like, it came very quickly. It was all of a sudden. The ICC arrest warrant came all of a sudden quickly. Like, things came very quickly after the elections, as we expected, right? We kind of like forecasted that in a couple episodes ago that this was going to happen, that Biden's going to come back and force an agreement. So the main thing that we need before we discuss the success is that Netanyahu changed course fully. The guy was so rebellious in America's face and totally silenced. Remember, his house was even targeted by a brigadier from the IDF itself. So set that aside. So something changed, right? And there was lots of pressure that was applied on Netanyahu by the Biden government. So the ICC arrest warrant, now we can say, as we predicted, that this was part of the pressure package to get him to stop, right? So that's one. Number two is sadly for him, basically, the IDF could not create an intrusion inside Lebanon and win. They were being destroyed every single day by Hezbollah, which is, to be honest, expected. What happened in 2006, I'm like, okay, you guys didn't resolve anything. You came in with your Merkava tanks in 2006. You got butchered. You had no plan. The IDF really did not have any plan. The only thing they did over the last 20 years is the pager explosion, right? That's the only thing that we saw. That's different. That's the only thing. 20 years. That's a real mess. By the way, going back to answer the question, who have won? Well, to understand who have won, you need to understand the objectives. What was the objectives? Netanyahu gave 4 objectives for his fight with Hezbollah. Number 1, to stop the rockets. Number 2, to bring back the settlers to the north. Number 3, to dismantle Hezbollah's ability to attack Israel. And number 4, to push Hezbollah beyond the Litani River, which is like several kilometers away from the border. How many of those basically were achieved? Well, stopping the rockets, you can give them, let's say, half check mark, because the ceasefire, stopped it. Right? But as he said already, this ceasefire, at least from the Israeli side, is a 2-month temporary ceasefire with an intention to make it permanent. So this is, let's say, a check mark. Let's give him a check mark because the rockets did stop. Right? Before the invasion of Lebanon, the Israelis were telling Hezbollah stop, so there's no war. Hezbollah said, no, we're going to continue. This is tit for tat. Number 2 is the settlers. The settlers, until now, they didn't come back. The settlers in Lebanon came back. Yeah. Right? All of them. The same night. Yes. Same night, like during Fajr, everybody came back from all over Lebanon to the south. They even came to the border towns, which are still, some of them still had Israeli tanks. The civilians came back where basically some of these towns were still occupied. That's how comfortable they were. Nobody from the Israeli side came in, and the IDF told their settlers that they can't come back now. It's still several months, 3 to 6 months at least, if I'm not mistaken. So that one basically is still an X for now. Dismantling Hezbollah definitely is a big X. Definitely is a big X. The last few days, Hezbollah, in one day, single day, shot over 300 missiles all over Israel, including Tel Aviv and around Tel Aviv. 300 missiles. They could not stop anything. Actually, the missiles increased. So definitely Hezbollah was not dismantled in any way or shape, even though they got hit with all of their military leadership was assassinated. Yes, definitely it hurt them, but it did not dismantle anything. Pushing them beyond the Litani River, I would say this is also it's X for now. Why is it X for now? Because nothing changed. Hezbollah still all over the south. They just go underground, right? And the Lebanese army will come in as it was before. Nothing changed. So they have not been able to push. In 2006, the UN resolution 1701 part of it was basically to push Hezbollah beyond the Litani. For 20 years almost, nothing changed. So until now it's X, unless in the future things happen to actually push Hezbollah for real. If, let's say, the Lebanese army is really equipped by the Americans, and this is what the Americans have promised Israelis, that they will equip the Lebanese army to be able to take over and control the south. So Hezbollah stays beyond at least the Litani River. So as you can see, there's like for now, it's a half check mark for Israel. Hezbollah, what was their goal? The initial goal, why they started this whole war, was to support Gaza and to push the Israeli government to stop their invasion of Gaza and to just leave. You see what I'm saying? And to get the deal that the Americans want. The Americans want a deal, and they want the war to be stopped. Hezbollah had the same exact goals. Just leave Gaza and create a deal to free the hostages, and we'll stop. Hezbollah did not achieve this goal, which was really the only goal. Now, if you add more goals, basically, because now Israel invaded Lebanon,
yes.
Definitely Hezbollah got a check mark. They did not allow them to come in. It's a total failure from the IDF perspective, as we said, and that's a victory for Hezbollah from that perspective. From a military perspective, it is victory. In turn, definitely Lebanon was huge areas in Lebanon, both in Beirut, in the south, and the Beqa' were destroyed. The loss of areas were literally flattened, right?
Even hours just before the ceasefire was finalized, just areas in Beirut were just being indiscriminately attacked.
Definitely. So that's why basically, like, we don't know who's going to win. Now, winning, people need to understand, winning is not a war. Sure, maybe the military incursion into Lebanon, the IDF lost, Israel lost, and the Hezbollah won in defending its country. Fine. But see, this is the issue. Us Muslims, we measure things with these military balances, right? We don't understand that there's a military victory, which we could give to Hezbollah for now, definitely. And there's also a political/strategic victory. And that's the most important. Because if somebody wins a war but loses the political battle and the strategic battle, they're actually at loss. The biggest question somebody should be asking is, why did Hezbollah stop? They were saying they will never stop until Gaza gets an agreement. So something's happening behind the scenes.
Hezbollah was in such a position. The IDF was low on manpower. Their morale was low. They weren't even able to properly enter southern Lebanon. Hezbollah seemed to be on the upper hand. And then this ceasefire, as you said, just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, is this a betrayal to the Muslims and our brothers and sisters in Gaza? Because Hassan Nasrallah said 6 days before he died that we will not get an agreement with Israel until the ceasefire is done with Gaza.
Yeah, that one, and the other things that Israel will never let its citizens go back to the north. If that happens, again, this is a big problem. Why did Hezbollah do that when they have an upper hand right now? And this is where we need to understand that this is where we tell our viewers. Some people basically accuse us of, we're being anti-Iran. Well, not the Iranian people, because these are Muslims and they're our brothers and sisters. Every Muslim is our brothers and sisters. But the Iranian regime, basically, yes, we might be against this regime in specific. So what's the issue? The issue is that the Iranian regime could possibly have pressured Hezbollah to stop. Why? But how could we explain this? Why would Hezbollah there's no reason for Hezbollah to stop, by the way. There's no reason for Hezbollah to stop. But Hezbollah would stop if Iran says stop. Why? Because Hezbollah is fully controlled by Iran, and it's something that Hezbollah is proud of. There's no guesswork here. This is something that Hezbollah says. We are fully funded, commanded by Iran on a spiritual, ideological level. The leadership of the Shia in Lebanon, which is really the leadership of Hezbollah, obeys Iran at the ideological level. They have a belief, there's a faith, there's an ideological, intellectual reasoning behind it. They believe that the leader of Iran, I'm speaking about Khamenei, not the president, the leader of the revolution, the supreme leader, not the president, he must be obeyed. Otherwise you would be disobeying God. There's this idea called Wilayat al-Faqih, the governance of the scholars, is what Khomeini in 79 or before 79 came up with. This it's a new theory. It's a new idea that was not present in the Ja'fari fiqh, the Ithna Ashari, the 12ers, Ja'fari madhab, right, which is the dominant Shia madhab in the world. Is around 90% of the Shia are Ja'fari, right, or 80% at least. This concept was actually illegal. It's haram. From a Shia thought perspective, the leaders of the Muslimin are supposed to be the sons of Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, starting with Ali, going down to Al-Mahdi, who is supposed to be the 12th Imam. The 11th Imam, which is Hassan al-Askari, rahimahullah, died in the middle of the 4th century Hijri. Right? So the Shia thought is that we're supposed to be That's why they call him al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar, the awaited savior, the awaited guide. So the Shia are not supposed to have leaders except the ones that are appointed by God, which are these 12. And the Mahdi is going to come at the end of time to make the Shia successful and so forth.
Now there's the awaited Mahdi. Then what is this new idea that came about afterwards with Khomeini?
Guardianship, people are not going to understand it. It's not the best translation. It's the political leadership of the scholar. Wilaya here, al-Wali, is the political leadership. So in the absence of al-Mahdi, who's going to lead the Shia? The Shia were always a minority within the bigger Islamic, let's say, empires, right? So they always lived, waiting for the Mahdi to come so that he can kind of make them victorious. With the Iranian Revolution, now you have a state. So now you have a religious state. So what are you going to do? So that's why Al-Khomeini had to basically make up a new theory. It's a bid'ah, really, to be honest. Even like if you ask Shia scholars, this is a bid'ah. From a Shia perspective, it's a bid'ah, innovation. So he proposed that, look, while the Mahdi is absent, who should be leading this nation, the Shia nation? The scholars. You see what I'm saying? So, and that scholar is kind of infallible because he's the Khalifa, he's the successor of the Mahdi. While the Mahdi is not there, he is his successor.
Do they say he's infallible or that his commands are binding until the Mahdi basically returns?
Well, at least, depends. I think there might be a difference in opinion in the Shia. I've heard both. But at least you must obey the leader.
Yes. You
must. Otherwise, you're a big sinner. And you're dividing the Ummah, you're dividing the Shia, you're dividing all that kind of stuff. Some of them say it's infallible. Some of them say every Ayatollah is infallible. Masoom. So Ayatollah Sistani is Masoom. You see what I'm saying? Because you're a marja'iyya, you're an ideological reference for the deen. So somebody have to guide you. If that person can make mistakes, then how can he guide you? So from a Shia thought perspective, the Ayatollah must be infallible. Because they're speaking on behalf of God. Okay, this is the Shia thinking. We don't believe in that as Sunnis. Our scholars basically are fallible and make mistakes. The ijtihad is dhanni.
So speculative. You cannot say this is 100% what Allah has said, this opinion, unless it's clear-cut text.
Yeah. Anyway, this could be back and forth, but at least the bottom line is that they have to obey him.
So how would that tie to Hezbollah now?
So Hezbollah must obey the Khamenei. Yeah, and if Khamenei basically aligned his interests with what the Americans want in the region, which is, I've been saying that many times, and it is aligned. Iran had no reason, if it was really about Shia domination. Well, to be honest, basically, let me rephrase that. Iran sees their ability to have a Shia domination through cooperating with the United States within the region. So they will ally themselves with the United States against the Sunnis so they can dominate. This is the Iranian strategy for the last 40 years. 45 years. And people basically can tell, well, look at the history. Look at the history between Iran and the United States. You see always alignment. They had alignment on Iraq. They had alignment on Syria. They had alignment in Lebanon. They have alignment even in Yemen, subhanAllah. But anyway, so this might be a different episode, inshallah, where we can really start pinpointing the strategic political decision of the Iranian regime and see. But for now, why is Iran and Hezbollah backing off? Right, Gaza is still basically under fire. The Israelis have occupied Gaza fully. They're building roads. They're literally going to continue to stay inside Gaza. Period. There's right now. There's nothing on the ground shows that the Israelis are going to leave Gaza ever. Okay, just like the Israelis have divided the West Bank into small little cantons. Yes. And they have roads and checkpoints and barriers and. In the West Bank, they're going to do the same thing to Gaza.
Because of this concept of wilayat al-faqih, Iran told this is a potential put pressure on Hezbollah to get to the ceasefire. Yes. But the question natural question we'll be wondering is, well, what's in it for Iran? Why do that?
Well, so that's what we've been saying from the beginning. Iran's aligning its interests with the United States. That means it has to serve the U.S. interest for it to be an ally to a certain extent. What is the United States' interest? That's basically the question we need to ask. The U.S., from day one, their interest is in maybe, let's say, three things. Number one, that Israel does not expel the Palestinians out of Gaza and probably the West Bank. Number two is to have some sort of stability in the area so they can continue with their trade route from India through UAE, Arabia, Jordan, and Israel. They need stability for that. If that economic line is important strategically for the United States, you need stability because you can't have economics without stability. Number three is for them to attain this stability, they need to serve some Israeli interest, right? And their interest, I would say, by eliminating, let's say, for example, the militant movements in the region. And that means Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, do they have to eliminate them fully? Maybe not necessarily. Maybe Hamas, for example. But at least I would say what gets discussed within the political circles is to dismantle the military wing of these groups and then keep them as a political force, as a political actors, both in the Palestinian and the Lebanese theaters, right? And as you can see, that's why do you think basically the Americans always support Netanyahu, even though there was friction with him dismantling Hamas? And right now, basically, with Hezbollah, there's a little difference because Hezbollah is keeping Israel within its borders, which is what the United States wants. The United States wants Israel to stay within these borders.
So no greater Israel.
No greater Israel from an American perspective. At least until now, this is the American policy, which is why Hezbollah, a militant Hezbollah, is needed by the United States. You see what I'm saying? But you don't want to endanger the existence of Israel. So that's why Hezbollah needs to also calm down. And since Netanyahu right now have been pressured by the Biden administration, it's done. Israel is done. The reason why Hezbollah was given a green light by the Iranians to start the war in October 8th was to put pressure on Israel and Netanyahu specifically. Now, the claim by the Iranians to Hezbollah that you guys are defending Gaza and so forth. But look, you stopped.
SubhanAllah.
We said two things, that Hezbollah right now, from a military perspective, they have the upper hand, right? Number two, the objective was not met yet, which is so why would you stop? It does not make any sense. And that's why from that perspective, Hezbollah did lose, and it will always lose because it's always connecting its interests with Iran, which is already aligned with the United States.
SubhanAllah, this is something important for the viewers to understand, right? Because on a lot of videos, when Sheikh, you mentioned this reality, people got triggered, people got very offended.
That's fine.
But the reality is like, oh, Iran is fighting for Palestine, they're the only ones fighting for Palestine, they will keep fighting for Palestine. And then we see that the people of Gaza are literally just abandoned on their own.
They've been abandoned, 100%. The leader of Hezbollah, the ex-leader, Hassan Nasrallah, said, we will not stop until an agreement happens with Gaza. But they just stopped. And look, if they were losing and they stopped, we would say, okay, look, they had to. But bro, what are you talking about? You're advertising every single day that you're winning, which has a reality because the Israelis could not invade Lebanon, right? So why would you stop that? Why would you stop? The only explanation for this right now, and look, at the end of the day, we'll see what's going to how things are going to unfold. We will know what's happening within the private rooms of political diplomacy, right? What's been happening? What was used as a pressure point, right? So we need to see. But for now, what we're seeing right now is that alignment between the Iranians and the United States, which led the Iranians to pressure Hezbollah to stop, and also the United States pressured Netanyahu to stop. You see what I'm saying?
It reminds me of a quote that I came across, an article written by former Major General Yitzhak Brick from the IDF. And he warned actually this past August 2024 that prolonged war with Hamas and Hezbollah will collapse Israel within a year.
Like 100%. There was lots of pressure on Israeli society, on Israeli government, Israeli economy, and Israeli military, from every aspect, right? If we're going to answer, like, who is actually the winner due to this ceasefire, the answer should be clear. It's the Americans. It's neither Hezbollah nor the Israelis. The real winner is the Americans. And because the Americans and the Israelis do have strategic alignment, way more with Iran than Hezbollah, you can say also Israel has some victory there. But the real winner is the United States. Why? Because the objective of the United States of creating now peace and stopping the war has been achieved. That's a check mark. To force Netanyahu to now create an agreement and to stop the war and to now even forcing him to do an agreement with Gaza, that's another check mark. And to create stability and to push away Hamas and Hezbollah. The United States achieved every objective.
So does Iran win anything strategically or gain anything strategically with this ceasefire?
Why did Iran come into the game in the first place? Iran came into the game in the first place, as you can see, right? Not to really save Gaza. Why did they come in the first place? What they announced on day one is that they're coming because of Gaza. Like everybody, all the Iranian proxies and Iran have said, look, this was a Gaza decision. We're just coming for the help. No, you just abandoned them.
So I'm just trying to understand, what is it that Iran gains from that? Because their reputation went up very high within the Ummah, let's say for the past year. The level of respect, the level of admiration, they almost became like a leader, viewed as a leader. And anyone who speaks against them was committing almost blasphemy. But now when they've done this, their real intention got exposed. So was there anything that they were able to gain from this?
Sadly, no. Sadly not. I mean, you started the whole episode by saying that most people are saying Hezbollah won. The public diplomacy, the public diplomacy, the image with the popular base of the Iranians, whether it's on the Sunni side or the Shia side, is that Iran won. Hezbollah won. Who was victorious? Hezbollah. Who's winning? Iran. You see what I'm saying? So that's why media is made to create a narrative. There's something called basically a reframing from a media theory perspective. They reframed the loss to make it into a victory. And most of the populace believe that. Now we're trying to uncover what people cannot see here by telling them that it was not a victory for Hezbollah, it was not a victory for Lebanon, it was not a victory for the Gazans, it was not a victory for the Muslimin in general. Maybe it's a victory for the Iranian regime because, again, they've tied their fate with the Americans. And I'm going to keep saying that because this is the truth. People can get angry. No problem. You get to know the truth soon and you'll realize it bit by bit. But people get emotional. Lots of Muslims think with their hearts. They don't think with their brains. This is the problem. You see what I'm saying? People get triggered. But think about it. Add 1 + 1 = 2. You'll see that at the end of the day, the Iranians have aligned their interests within the region with the Americans, and they're not there to confront the Americans or to go into a head-on collision. There's no friction, there's no collision between the United States and Iran.
So do they get flexibility for like the nuclear energy or anything? America was been pressuring them. There's a nuclear deal, then it was removed. And is this like an opportunity for them to like a little bit of a give and take to kind of grow their nation and their power a little bit?
Look, as I said before, I said in a different episode, Iran wants to survive and to continue to nurture its goals within the Middle East region by serving United States interests. The minute it does not, what happens?
They'll get destroyed.
Well, forget about getting destroyed. It gets in confrontation with the United States. The Iranian regime does not want that. Period.
Speaking of reframing, I think a person who is always reframing like every other month is this guy Netanyahu. He originally said that our goal is to dismantle Hezbollah on November 1st. November 25th, 26, 25 days later, all of a sudden it's a ceasefire. And he says to his citizens in Israel, here are the 3 reasons why this is a good thing. Number 1, we need to focus on the Iranian threat. Number 2, we need to allow the army to recuperate and receive more advanced weapons. And then number 3, to isolate Hamas and the people of Gaza so that we can fully destroy Hamas. Now, these 3 things, which one is propaganda and reframing and which one's actually truth?
Look, in terms of recuperation of the army, 100%. People don't understand. The news in the American and the Israeli media is that the Biden administration slowed down delivery of weapons to Israel. Period. This was strategic. If they do that, Israel would be choked. So that's another pressure point by the Biden administration against Netanyahu. So the recuperation is 100%. The soldiers and the military is devastated from being tired last 1 year and so forth. So lots of pressure there. In terms of the Gaza thing, definitely this is also a real thing. And Netanyahu from day one wanted to isolate the Palestinian and the Gaza and from the northern region. Wanted Hezbollah to stop. They will deal with Hezbollah later. They just want to take care of Gaza. Right now they want to take care of Gaza. And to be honest, they've succeeded in Gaza way more than they succeeded in Lebanon. If Gaza is destroyed, people will leave. The minute peace comes back and Israel basically is occupied Gaza, the Gazans can immigrate. This is what Smotrich have been saying basically all along, that if they couldn't push them by force into Egypt, well, they'll make them leave by choice because they destroyed the infrastructure of the whole Gaza strip, the whole strip. In terms of confronting the Iranian threat, maybe. At the end of the day, we need to discuss the new administration with Trump in a separate episode. But if the Trump administration wants to smash Iran and smash at least the nuclear project of Iran once and for all, this is something maybe the Netanyahu government and even like post-Netanyahu Israeli government would be very happy to do because the Saudis want it and the Israelis want it. And those are 2 very strong allies to the United States, way more important from that perspective to at least Trump than Iranian interests. So let's see how things unfold. At the end of the day, the biggest loss right now is for the Gazans. They're left alone by everybody.
It's something I came across online about someone who's defending Hezbollah's decision. And I want to present this to you so that we can kind of understand what's right, what's wrong here. And so they would argue that Israel is the bigger loser because Hezbollah has been having some tensions at home. So they needed to kind of bring down this war, get a little ceasefire, and they can recuperate, they can build up their strength further. And the Lebanese are going back. But the Israeli settlers are not going back to the north, as you mentioned. The soldiers and the military seems to still be there because they're being cautious. So they still keep the pressure on them while winding down the tensions domestically in Lebanon, and they can build up their strength further. Some people might say that is in a way, even though they didn't secure the interest of Gaza, because of what's going on at home, they kind of had to maneuver and rechange their approach. Well, what do you say about that? Is that someone making stuff up? Is it true? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think the Lebanese scene is fully stable. There are basically certain Christian factions and political parties and even militias that want to get rid of Hezbollah. The voices of these people have been very loud in the last several weeks, especially last week. There was almost 12 interviews in a single day by these Christian militia leaders and political parties that are blasting Hezbollah. But if Israel couldn't even basically smash Hezbollah, trust me, the power balance is huge. right? There's no real threat to Hezbollah from these people, as of now.
Yes.
Every analysis basically is a function of time, right? So that's not correct. That's not correct.
Last episode, you had analysis on the ICC arrest warrants, that it was a means for America to pressure Israel to come to the
And
table.
as you can see, right after he agreed to the ceasefire, right? Before
Yes.
he was never agreeing to it. So
some interesting developments, right? As of today, France has changed their stance. They said, okay, if Netanyahu comes here, we're going to give him immunity. So they're not going to arrest him. UK, Italy, other countries seem to be leaning this direction.
yeah.
Why this change?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The stance of all these countries was we're going to arrest Netanyahu and comply with ICC. This is before what? The ceasefire.
Yes.
After Netanyahu accepted the ceasefire, they're like, okay, we just relax it. And it shows that this was an American plan to pressure Netanyahu. Now his neck is on the line right now. And that's why he had to accept the ceasefire. And that's it.
The way the UN and these international rules-based order, they always speak about, we want to have international rules-based order, which is just American domination.
Yeah.
The argument that France and other nations use, which is interesting, is like, oh, Israel's not party to the ICC, so we need to give him immunity. But Russia is not party to the ICC, but they celebrated the arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin. So does this hypocrisy show the end of this whole thing called international rules-based order? Like some people say, expose the UN and goodbye to the UN.
I mean, to be honest, the UN has been exposed for the last 70 years, right, of its operation. How many United States resolutions against Israel has been released or announced in the last 7 decades? Many. None of them were complied by. These organizations are for colonialization purposes. And that means the United States will use them as a tool for its interests, and that's it.
It seems like one big issue we have time and time again, we pin our hopes onto a specific country, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and we keep getting fooled. We pin our hopes to a specific country, we get let down. We pin our hopes to another country, we get let down. It's just a cycle that repeats over and over again. How can the Ummah get out of this pattern?
Well, the only way to get out of this pattern is really to understand geopolitics as it is. We have a short-term memory. In World War I, the whole Middle East, the whole Muslim world was occupied. From Indonesia to Morocco. Everybody. I mean, you can say with the exclusion of the Turkish Republic, which was taken over by agents of the West, by Mustafa Kemal and his cronies. What changed since then until today? Since 1918, let's say, until today, almost 100 years, did anybody basically study the history of these countries in the change of power? For example, Saudi Arabia. What happened? Nothing. From the grandfather to the children, right? Which is the king still is one of the children, Salman, but the de facto ruler is the grandson. The same ruling family is still there. What changed in Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, before it was built, allied themselves with the British and they fought against the Uthmaniyin, the Ottomans, and they were part of the demise of Islam and the Muslimin. What changed? Like people have short-term memory. This is, subhanAllah, this is what really makes one's blood boil, because there's people getting slaughtered every day due to our political ignorance. What happened in Turkey? It's the same regime. One president after another president, a super secularist, Kemalist, until we get to Erdogan. Okay, well, Erdogan is one person. Did he change the whole country? No. He almost even lost in the last election. The institutions are still filled with secular Kemalists. The majority of Turks, if you exclude the Kurds in Turkey, the majority of Turks are super secular Islam haters. Sorry to say it this way, guys, but it's the truth. I'm not saying 90%, but probably 55%. Still a majority. Yeah, if it's 20%, it's too much. This is a Muslim country. This is the seat of the Khilafah for the last 600 years. You have its own citizens, own people. The Ottomans themselves are secularists. What changed? Nothing changed. You see what I'm saying? Is Erdogan really acting like a Muslim ruler who's defending the slaughter and the rape of Muslim men and women? Even men are being in Palestine. Men. It's documented by Israeli and international human rights organizations and the ICG and the United Nations. Who's doing anything about it? Let's take Morocco. Who's ruling Morocco? The king, the son of a king, the son of a king. From the colonial times until now, nothing changed. Nothing changed. Why do we have these short-term memories? Because we're very emotional. We're not using our minds. The minute a nation becomes emotional, khalas. Just like a teenager. You make all the blunders that you want. But we have to increase our political understanding. And those regimes specifically made us ignorant. I can't accuse of the Ummah except in goodness. But the Ummah have been colonialized for the last 100 years. And these tyrannical regimes and authoritarian regimes, many of them are Islam haters, have kept the Ummah in political ignorance. But we need to realize that and get out of that hole and climb out of this mess. This little show is basically one push towards our intellectual emancipation first that would, inshallah, lead to political emancipation. Things start here first until they embody themselves, manifest themselves in reality.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan, Shaykh. May Allah bless you for that advice. So everybody, make sure you like, you subscribe, comment, and share. We want to continue the engagement on these videos and spread them to remove the intellectual slavery, to emancipate us intellectually before we get politically emancipated, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So we'll see you on the next episode of the I3 Pulse. Watch this space. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.